Cartoon Network has had a rough few years. After spending a while as the target of plenty of hate and complaints, the network seems to be on its way back up from rock bottom. So how did Cartoon Network do in 2019? Well, they did okay. How okay? Let's take a look back and find out. I honestly don't know what's been going on inside of Cartoon Network the past few years. They were on top of the world at the start of the decade, then Teen Titans Go came in and ruined everything, turning the middle of the decade into a race to the bottom. Now Cartoon Network is on a face-saving redemption tour, and apparently to them that means putting out a steady diet of bland, inoffensive, and mediocre fare that neither riles up ire nor inspires epic odes to its greatness. While Cartoon Network hasn't learned from some of its mistakes, scheduling most egregiously, they have succeeded in not bringing any more major outrage their direction in 2019, which I guess is an achievement for them. Cartoon Network's series output for the year was defined by blandness and mediocrity, though that's just a continuation of their trend from last year. They had glimmers of hope in their content this year, but those were snuffed out quickly, one way or another. The core example of this was Mao Mao Heroes of Pure Heart, which premiered back in July. The adventure comedy follows the title character Mao Mao, looking for fame and legend, his sidekick Badgerclops, and his adoring fan/tag-along buddy Adorabat as they protect the defenseless citizens of the Pure Heart Valley. I made a video about this back when it premiered, I'll link in the description. The show has spent the year biding its time, running on Saturday mornings at 10 and garnering mediocre ratings, which fits about right because despite its action-packed promises, the show eventually reveals itself to be just as terribly bland as the rest of the shows that Cartoon Network airs right now. Zagtoon, the French animation powerhouse of Miraculous Ladybug fame, has not had a great time here in the States. Both of its previous series, Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir and Zack Storm, have been shunted around multiple networks and have suffered in ratings and recognition because of it. But perhaps with a proper American partner, their third time will be the charm, right? Well, unfortunately for them, their American partner was Cartoon Network, and despite hailing from Man of Action, creators of one of CN's most lucrative franchises this century, Power Players was not great. I guess the forces of European creativity could not overpower the American blandness apparent on Cartoon Network right now. The show is super creative in terms of concept and characters, but the execution just doesn't add up. I just recently did a video on this show where I share my full thoughts, which will also be down in the description. The problem that's plagued Cartoon Network's original series for the past few years is that you have to slog through half a season or more, at least, of boring episodes before they even offer hints of exposition. Following Cartoon Network is an endurance test more than anything, and most viewers just don't have the patience for that. Hence why most viewers haven't been tuning into Cartoon Network lately, and their ratings have sank further and further this year. If Cartoon Network isn't defined by mediocrity in 2019, it's defined by murder. Sundays are where kids' TV goes to die, and Cartoon Network only proved that again in 2019. Sundays on the network became Sunday Bloody Sunday, as several series faced relatively honorable deaths or burn-off runs there this year. The Powerpuff Girls reboot, the Ben 10 reboot, Mighty Magiswords, which Cartoon Network basically gave up on after early attempts to push the show a couple years ago, and most notably OKKO Let's Be Heroes, which, despite its attainment of an actual fan base, couldn't resist weird bouts of executive nostalgia pandering and weird crossover times that seemed to make no sense, all proceeded through Sundays as if it were a march to a mass execution. They gave the shows at least some dignity by running most of them in the afternoon when audiences are actually awake, but that does little. One of the shows sent to the Sunday electric chair was Summer Camp Island, which returned for the second half of its first season in late June, after a year-long hiatus partly caused by burning off the first half of the season on one murderous Saturday last July. Somehow the show managed to survive that, but wasn't treated any better this year, bringing through the remainder of the season over 5 somewhat less homicidal Sundays in June and July. While Summer Camp Island started out its burn-off for this year by garnering ratings similar to its death run last year, the show commemorated the one-year anniversary of its slaughter premiere by registering a series low rating of 203,000 viewers. Somehow this show has a season 2 coming, according to creator Julia Pott back at San Diego Comic-Con. I don't know why Cartoon Network agreed to that when they're just going to go and abuse this show like this. I'm not even a fan of this show, as aside from its art style, which almost garishly contrasts with the rest of the channel's output, it's just the same milquetoast kind of creation CN's been rubber stamping lately, but I have to speak up over the show's scheduling, as Summer Camp Island's practically become a poster child for bad content treatment. Victor and Valentino was the lone bright spot in the full series that Cartoon Network started this year. A Mexican folklore-infused adventure, the show follows the two tall half-brothers as they find their way into mysterious and strange happenings around the town of Monte Macabre, a place name that the show seems to have trouble pronouncing consistently.
Cabin Monte Macabre.
The Monte Macabre.
In Monte Macabro.
I made several videos on the show when it first came out, which I'll link to in the description, and my main reaction was that it started decently, but had trouble keeping its head above the waters of blandness that CN is swimming in right now. It is the only full-length original series from CN I'd actually recommend you watch from 2019. The one good thing to come out of Cartoon Network this year that measures up on a similar level to other networks is the miniseries turned anthology Infinity Train, which ran Cartoon Network back in August, and will open up Book 2 next year, likely after the launch of HBO Max as is ultimately moving there. Book 1, as we now know it, followed Tulip, as she tried to get off of the eponymous Endless Train, facing life-threatening challenges and coming to terms with harrowing personal realizations along the way. The miniseries was widely praised, including by myself in a video, and shows that maybe, somewhere in Cartoon Network, there's something in them that can punch above mediocrity and create something that's actually good, and watchable, and interesting. However, the show is being shipped off to HBO Max now, so, like Nick did with Pinky Malinky, Cartoon Network is now joining in on sending good shows off to die hard. I'd like to take a moment to honorably mention shows from this year that honestly weren't going to get anywhere on Cartoon Network. Bakugan Battle Plant, both doomed to Sunday 7 AM burn-offs and continuing the long-standing Cartoon Network tradition where they leave Toei anime to die at ridiculous times in the morning, the worst scheduling tendencies of Cartoon Network, and the hallmark of death slaying on kids' TV. It's the most ambitious crossover of all time. DC Superhero Girls, also toy-centric but western and intended for girls, which also means it's not going to do well but for different reasons. After being initially doomed to Sundays, the show has bounced around different time slots and suffered from inconsistent scheduling, and therefore has middling to low ratings to match. There's still half the season to go for this show, but if it gets any more than that, maybe one more season if I'm being extra generous, I would be surprised. Transformers Cyberverse, also toy-centric and western, but for boys, warning, does not change the fact that it's a long-known CN death slot. The show premiered last fall and rated sort of okay, but Season 2, in its new, crappier time slot, rates exactly as you expect, raking in about 250,000 viewers. It will continue to exist for as long as Hasbro thinks it's a good idea to keep pouring money into that hole. Between CN and Discovery Family, they don't exactly have a decent place for any of the shows they put out right now. Mega Man Fully Charged. Oh, bless its heart. Good try, Kana. The show was originally announced as a thing back in 2015, but it was ultimately delayed to 2018. Band of Action, again of Ben 10 fame et al., and DHX Media, of too many Canadian shows to name fame, were both tied into the project, and it eventually premiered last August on Cartoon Network in the US and last September on Family Charged in Canada. Cartoon Network wanted the show dead on arrival, apparently, and ditched the series premiere on a Sunday morning at 6:30 AM. Save for a few weekend runs and strip premiere burn-off weeks, Sundays are where it stayed all the way through its standard issue 52 episodes. Cartoon Network wanted to kill this show, and they were successful. Ratings only topped 300,000 on a few occasions, and largely the show stayed in the low to mid 200,000s range. I haven't seen such a calculated and intentional killing of a new show since Cartoon Network screwed over the US relevance of Detention Air 6 years ago. Yet this is something I only expect Cartoon Network to pull off so ruthlessly. Scooby-Doo and Guess Who is, like all the other entries in this long-running Hanna-Barbera franchise, a show that exists. A show that exists for seemingly little reason, yet Cartoon Network pours money into that trademark maintenance pit all the same. This time, the gimmick is guest stars, so they're pouring a bit more money into said trademark maintenance pit than usual, but that changes little. Away from the new boringness and the calculated murder, a lot of Cartoon Network shows just continued to exist in 2019. Just plodding through their runs unassumingly and doing nothing else. The Ben 10 reboot continues to exist, I guess because the toy sales have been able to buoy the show enough that Cartoon Network can overlook the ratings in the 300,000 and 400,000 range, briefly dipping to 266,000 in the middle of Season 3 over the summer. The show continues to run Saturdays at noon, which feels slightly ditchy, but only because I'm old enough to remember ABC Kids' cold shouldering Power Rangers at that hour. Total Dramarama also continued to exist in 2019. It's just finished up its first season and has been renewed for a second. While it no longer destroys Teen Titans Go in the ratings, it still rates decently. Although I'm not in the Total Drama fandom and thus don't care, this show has taken flack from diehard fans who'd rather have another regular season of the animated lampoon of reality competitions rather than this alternate universe show where they're all toddlers. Honestly, as a fan of subversions, I'd like that too. even though I probably wouldn't watch. Craig of the Creek also continues to be a thing. The show, about the title character and his friends exploring the untamed, unrestricted wilderness playground of the title Creek, was renewed this summer for a third season. The second had fewer episodes than the first, being cut down from an already skinny 20.5 hours to just 13, so I expect the third season to be similarly short. I reviewed the show in a video last year, that I'll have in the description, but I just found that it took too long to get going anywhere, a common problem with Cartoon Network's 2018 stuff. Apple and Onion, somehow, still exists, and it'll be getting a second season at some point. The show premiered last year, and I covered it in detail then as part of a review of multiple CN series. I'll also stick that in the description. The show follows our titular anthropomorphic foods as they make their way in the big city. I remarked the show had European stylings, but failed to actually understand how to do that correctly. Plus, it suffers from being overly childish at times. The show is currently living out its days on Saturday mornings at 9:30, plodding along as its ratings sink further and further. If you want the same European feel, I suggest watching an actual European show. May I suggest Boyster? The few dust-ups CN has kicked up have been relatively minor things. We haven't had a repeat of the week of Nothing But Teen Titans Go from the holidays in 2017, for instance, or anything even on the same level of outrage that caused. Unikitty has been AWOL since March. Maybe it's been laying low after that whole debacle with Nick's acquisition Arbuck, nay Rainbow Butterfly Unicorn Kitty, but the gap, plus how Season 2 has been strip burnt so far, seems suspicious. The show still rates well enough, so I don't see why it's been so absent, but I wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the season is just burnt off in a ridiculous and/or stupid fashion next year. The Amazing World of Gumball seems to be Schrodinger's cat right now. It's simultaneously finished and continuing. Fans of the show were left unimpressed by the Season 6 finale, and as it stands right now, a new season hasn't been confirmed. The show will be getting more episodes by way of a Darman's Yearbook miniseries run, but it seems the creator Ben Bacalé wants to tie things up with a series-ending movie rather than new episodes. At 6 seasons, the show's had a good run, so I don't blame him. Looking at the big picture, I think you can argue that Cartoon Network in 2019 has been okay. They haven't put out a lot of shows good enough to be undoubtedly praised, yet, unlike previous years, they haven't made decisions bad enough for them to be reviled. Cartoon Network has reached an equilibrium, putting out unassuming shows and not really ruffling feathers. But Cartoon Network can't be unassuming forever. At some point, they're gonna have to put out a new show that inspires better comments than "at least it's not abjectly awful." At some point, they're going to have to create new series that don't need 10 episodes to warm up. At some point, the endless reruns of TTG and Gumball will fail them, and they'll have to put more variety into their scheduling. At some point, viewers will get tired of their favorite shows being shafted to weird time slots with few to no repeats, and they'll have to do something to rebuild ratings and win those viewers back. Cartoon Network did okay in 2019. Not great, not horrible, not even good. Just okay. But to quote their new corporate overlords, just okay is not okay. They need to do better than okay if they want to be relevant again. They need to put out good shows, treat them well, and stop disrespecting their audience through bad scheduling decisions. Christina Miller, head of the channel for 15 years, just left the company, so maybe things will change, though I have plenty of reasons to doubt that, and continue to believe Cartoon Network will focus on just being mediocrely okay next year too. There are plenty of shows I haven't mentioned, like We Bare Bears, which is getting a 4th season of a movie and a baby spinoff, and Steven Universe, which I'm glad is finally dying, and stuff that's been shunted to the Boomerang streaming service. But honestly, I haven't cared enough about Cartoon Network this year to pour over every second of their output in 2019. I think I've done a decent job covering the highlights though. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to explore more from the world of television with me every single week, and check the description for full reviews of a lot of the shows I've mentioned in this video. I'm Benson Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television, and I'll see you next time.